Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town. All right, Tyler Gould, how we doing?
Mike Freeman, I'm doing great because it's Richest Men in Town night, man.
Man, don't you just have some incredible clarity after spending some time with our guest, Jim Morrison, mutual friend of a friend.
Yeah.
Right. So Dave Specht throws us a bone, says, you got to talk to Jim Morrison. This guy's got an amazing story. And man, did he deliver.
Yeah, it was powerful. I mean, I do feel lucky. I just feel like after I get to spend a couple hours with somebody like Jim and hear about the stories and how they've navigated some of the things they've gone through, it's a mind blower. I mean, Jim really teaches the lesson tonight about seeing God in the middle of what would be considered a disaster. And I thought it was a powerful lesson.
Yeah. A disaster times, I mean, exponential, right?
Yeah. It's hard to even put.
Yeah. Exponential. We don't want to spoil that. But I want to thank Jim for the way he does show up to tell that story. And, I don't know what your notes look like, but I've got pages of notes and things that Jim Morrison shares with us. I mean, we're pretty lighthearted at the outset, and then he's just dropping nuggets of battle-tested, hard-earned wisdom as we wrap things up with him.
Yeah, I just really feel like, again, I don't want to spoil anything, but some of the knowledge that Jim's dad drops on Jim in the middle of some of these hard times was powerful to me. It resonated with me, and I told you, Mike, that's going to be in my hip pocket for a long time to come.
Yeah. So I don't know if this has ever happened before, but after we cut, we usually end every time we end the program with, what does it mean to you? Right?
Yeah.
To be considered the richest man in town. After we cut and Jim jumps off the call, we look at each other, and I think there was a mutual feeling of like, we're the richest men in town.
Amen. Yeah.
Right. Every week we have an opportunity to sit down with men and women that are in the trenches. They're doing the work. They're walking the walk, like we always talk about, right? They're living their lives. They're just showing up. They're you, they're me, they're average, ordinary folks living extraordinary lives, doing small things on a consistent basis, and therein lies their power.
Yeah. I think the formula for what we're looking for in our lives, Mike, is on display every week. And I'm just grateful to be a part of this with the people that come on. I really do feel like my own personal network is expanding in a big way. And I'm just grateful to know all these people that, 90% of them I've never met in person. And 90%. I'm totally blown away by them.
And I say all the time, man, I'll go to battle with that guy. These people are in battles.
In battles, yeah.
They're in battles, right? Of course I'd go to battle with them because they're in it. You're in it. I'm in it, right? We're all dealing with those things. But man, the perspective that Jim and his family share with us tonight is truly something special.
Powerful.
Yeah, very powerful. So to the Morrison family, thank you so much. To Dave Specht, we owe you some lunch sometime. To our listeners, Jim Morrison has an amazing life experience and journey that he's going to drop on you. Take some notes. do something with it, right? Apply. Let's be in moments, right? Yeah, forward thinking's cool, but let's just be in some moments. Let's live our lives. It's never as good as we think it is, and it's never as bad as we think it is.
Yeah.
Little nuggets that he's dropping along the way. Everybody's got something, but Jim gives us a masterclass on how to deal with the something that we're carrying. So enjoy your time with Jim Morrison on this episode of The Richest Men in Town. Here's where I'm at.
Lay it on me.
Maya Angelou, my girl Maya.
Yeah.
Came across this the other morning, and it's kind of just been rattling around. It's on my 3x5 card that I'm carrying around.
Nice.
I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it.
I like it. I mean, look, I like it. I think, we've talked before. It's like, we have moments, right? We have moments in life that they're profound. And sometimes those moments are life altering, those are life changing, right? But I also think that there's things that happen to us that we don't have to accept and say, that is me. That moment in time defines who I am, right? I think, look, life is we've got time to make changes.
And can we think about this too? Like, can you imagine going through something and you're less because of it? Like, think about everything that we've learned on this show, everything that we've learned about life and adversity and all these things. Can you imagine anything you're going through, anything, and that you're less because of it?
And I mean, you could think, and yeah, that's a great point, because, I think that you could go through every one of our guests and they would tell you, you could look at these moments in time that they've faced that could be reducing moments, right? That end up being empowering moments. I mean, when you look back at last week with Wade Snar, right? He talks about growing up and some of the influences in his life. He talks about some of the disasters that, that he faced in relationships and things, and feeling like he wasn't worth anything, but then was able to kind of overcome that and find himself in a better spot. So I love it.
And I will say, when you're in the middle of it, that's not the time to take that inventory.
No, I mean, look, when you're in the middle of it, surviving, right? You're surviving.
Yeah.
I agree. But I think
the only thing that I'm feeling a little bit like objection to is, like, I've seen these pictures, I've seen these graphics, and they're touching when I see them on Facebook, where there's silhouette of a dad, and he's taking out a piece of himself and he's handing it to his kid. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Like, your kid is hurting, so you take and you take from what you got and you give it and you sacrifice for your kids. Right?
Okay.
But even then, I'm thinking you're going to come out and the ledger is going to be in the positive.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's a loss at that point. In fact, I think there's probably a huge gain if you're willing to give of yourself to help someone else reach a higher space, right?
That's what I'm thinking. I think that's what my girl Maya is thinking.
Yeah, I'm buying that,
right?
man.
I'll let it change me, right? And I think that's the idea. We're supposed to be going through life and changing. If we're living life and life isn't changing us, we're not repenting, right? Repenting is change, and changing the way we think, and changing the way we act. But I will not let it reduce me. I will not be less because of this.
Right.
Almost like a snowball rolling down a mountain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to accumulate experience, and that experience is going to enlarge my soul. It's going to enlarge my mind. I'm going to be better.
Yeah. I think
I'm enlarge 239.4.
Hey, now you up a couple, huh? That's all right.
That's
all right.
That
hey,
I'm like that snowball rolling down
yeah.
the mountain,
But hopefully some of that 2 pounds is just wisdom.
It's wisdom.
A couple pounds of wisdom in there.
Here's what I'm at, man. I think it's muscle.
Hey, there we go. Hey, I think
muscle.
at some point,
I've been going to the gym every day working out. I think it's muscle, brother.
Okay, I like it.
Oh, the things we say. Right?
Sometimes, you just look and you're like, that's muscle with some padding. It's muscle with a little padding on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like that padding around the field goal post, like
exactly.
That guy's really iron hard. He needs some padding. People are going to run into him, get concussions and stuff.
No, that's dangerous.
I don't want to be doing that.
That's dangerous, man. I'm not about putting people at risk. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, look, but the effort is ongoing, is what you're telling me.
It's ongoing.
I like that.
We are making progress in some places. Like, let's make the golf analogy, right? I think I'm crushing it off the tee. Right now, I'm missing 3-foot putts.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. I was golfing with a guy years ago. Phil Fesser, by the way. Shout out
Phil,
to
get on
Fesser.
the show.
Yeah.
This episode brought to you by Phil.
I'm golfing with Phil. Phil, he's hitting the ball probably 30 yards at a shot, right? And he would just look at me and go,
slight exaggeration?
Maybe slight. Okay. But honestly, like this is the definition of duffing, right? And he says to me, as long as I'm advancing the ball. I like it. As
long as I'm advancing the ball.
Life lesson right there, dropped by Phil. I'm like, yeah, I get it, man. As long as we're going in the right direction.
Advancing the ball.
And we're advancing it. Hey.
What did your boy Bellinger say when he hit that game-winning hit against the Giants? I love when he said, yeah, I was looking for a single. I'm just looking for a single.
Right. Chris Taylor, right? I'm looking for the single.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Right.
And like big things happen when you look at little things.
Yeah, I agree. Right. And if we boil that back down to like sort of our mission here of making some progress in our own lives in the right direction. Right. We've talked about this a lot, when we're looking at small incremental changes, I think that's where it's at. When we're so focused on, hey, I'm at 239. I want to be at 190. I mean, that's a jump. But if we can do it piece by piece, we'll get there. So.
Well, I got that other quote.
Lay it on me. I don't have it in front of me, so read it for me.
Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yeah.
When you cease to make a contribution, you begin to die. Ooh. When you cease to make a contribution, you begin to die.
Yeah. I like that. I do like that.
That's a little harsh. Like, why are you here? If you're not contributing, that's the beginning of the end of you.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. You sent me something else. So life is either a daring adventure or nothing.
Nothing.
Now I like that too. I think if I think of Roosevelt's comments,
Helen Keller. Let's
and I think of Helen Keller's quote of a daring adventure or nothing. I would add maybe some caution to those quotes, right?
They're pretty binary, right? It's either all or nothing.
Yeah, and I think that if we're looking at the size of the contribution or the size of the adventure and we're judging it by that, right? Sometimes an adventure, Mike, is having some issues in your family and you're working your tail off to make things work and make things right. And that is a daring adventure right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, versus like head in the sand, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes, we get caught up in this, well, shoot, all I'm doing is working 9 to 5 and going to my kids' games and loving my family and this guy out here is climbing Mount Everest, for crying out loud. That sounds like the daring adventure. But I would say that the guy that or the girl that is, single mom that's waking up every morning and getting her kids off to school and going to work and grinding at work all day and then coming home and making dinner and crashing on the couch, dead tired, and waking up there in the morning on that same couch is probably a greater adventure than that guy on Mount Everest, there's some people that are going to come out on the other side that are going to be able to be some mountain climbers, you know?
Yeah, we're not talking like a North Face commercial.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we just have to, people just need to be, because I love the Roosevelt quote and I love the Helen Keller quote. And I think that we have to be looking at those quotes through the right lens, I guess is my point.
And the lens I would recommend would not be a 24-hour time period.
Yeah.
Because every once in a while, you come home and it's like, I didn't contribute a dang thing today.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah.
And who 100%. Knows? You don't know. You don't know what your impact did. You don't know what your influence did. But I can tell you sometimes you come home and it's like, today didn't feel like an adventure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, today felt like a lot of me on a Zoom call.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that, you know, I think for our audience, you know, you read those quotes, I'm hoping that they're feeling like, you know, that their life is an adventure, you know. Sometimes waking up in the morning and driving to get gas on your way to work, that's part of the adventure, man. You know what I mean?
I think everyone thinks adventurous people are the people that go talk to kids on career day. Okay?
Yeah.
Nobody calls up a school administrator and says, "Hey, you want to come talk to your class about career day?" You know, no offense to accountants, but accountants probably don't get invited to.
Yeah. It's like this, it's like firemen and police officers and CIA agents.
But you know what? Firemen can't have all the fun. You know what I mean?
Nah, come on. I
can be an adventurous accountant.
100%. I think there's a movie about that. Come on now.
Yeah, I think he leaves the accountant gig and goes and seeks adventure.
Oh, well, maybe you can't be an adventurous accountant after all.
Well, surely, right? What if you find a discrepancy in the books and it's like, do I hide it? Do I let it go?
Hey, look,
that's adventurous.
Al Capone was taken down by an accountant. Come on now. Right?
That's an adventure. Yeah.
Well, look, speaking of adventures, we have a friend on the show tonight of a friend. Yeah.
Friend of a friend is a favorable pattern on the richest men in town. We are batting 1,000 when it comes to friends of friends.
Yeah.
Friends of friends might actually be better than our friends. No offense, our friends, but
yeah, I was just going to say
friend of a friend referral seems to work well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, what does that tell people about our pool?
So, all right, Dave Specht, props to you. Dave reached out to us and said, I got a guy. Actually, he gave us a few people. And so you'll be hearing from them in the future. But tonight is about Jim Morrison.
Yeah.
Right. Jim Morrison is going to be our guest, friend of a friend through Dave Specht.
And this is not the Lizard King, right? This is a different Jim Morrison that we're talking about here. Is that right? I just want to clarify for our audience. You know, they want to know.
Right now, people are dropping their frying pans.
They are pulling over on the freeway.
Like, whoa.
Like, what they're like, I knew the guy was still around, right? So I'm sorry, continue.
Speaking of Lizard King, not really. Not
okay.
Did the Willie Nelson thing happen?
It did happen.
We got to get a report.
It happened, and it was everything I hoped it would be.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Willie delivered,
man. Now, let me tell you. So I'm a...
Hold on. So you went with the Ricker, right? You went with your wife. You didn't go by yourself. You're not concert by yourself guy.
No, I'm not concert by myself guy. I mean, I'm not above that. but this one I did go with my wife, and it was a fantastic evening of good music, man. Listen to the Avett Brothers.
Willie, good vibes.
Avett Brothers were amazing, and Willie just came out, plopped himself down on a stool in front of a microphone, and just jammed out, man. It was great. He sounded great.
Indoor,
how
outdoor.
old that dude is.
Outdoor?
It was outdoors, an outdoor amphitheater. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. It was great, man.
Rocking bandana and braids?
He had the full get up, man. He had the cowboy hat, bandana, and braids.
So I picture that being an acoustic event. No, is he mixing it in?
So it was he played with his son, who was on a guitar as well. His son was on the electric guitar. Willie played his usual guitar, and he had a stand-up bass guy, a guy on a snare, and a harmonica dude. And it was
all you needed.
Man. It's all you needed, man. It was great.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So good times.
This episode brought to you by the Outlaw Tour. Outlaw?
Yeah, the Outlaw Tour. Yeah. I bought a little gear. I haven't bought gear, dude.
Well, you bought swag?
Yeah.
Merch.
I figured I'd go for the merch for the guy that might not be around that much longer. I got merch at his show.
Okay, so hold on. How do you feel? Because I'm talking to, in your core, you are a punk rock. Jim Morrison, we will get to Jim Morrison.
Oh, yes. Yeah, for sure.
At your core, you're a punk rock.
I do love punk rock music.
Now, punk rock cannot be about buying the t-shirt so people can see that you went to the concert.
No, it's more for my own, it's one of those things that you're not going to be wearing it to have a discussion with people. But it's something I can just pull out and be like, yeah, I was there. Me, Willie, and the crew, we were together. And we sang out loud together at the show. It was good times, man. Good times. I recommend it. If you have an opportunity to see Willie Nelson before he leaves this earth, I recommend it, man.
For what it's worth, I did hear that the Doobie Brothers was straight fire.
Wow. Was it actually described like that? Straight fire?
I passed on it. Straight fire. I can't actually describe how it was described. I can't use the words.
Oh, wow. That's strong.
Yeah. It's borderline inappropriate, family program. But the person that texted me was like, yeah.
Well, somebody.
Dare I say light my fire. Dare I say light my fire.
There's something for everyone, man. You know what I mean? There's someone out there that right now is listening to Whitesnake and they're like, yep, this is it, man.
Here I go again on my own.
You go, right? Or they're listening to Rat and they're like, yep, the best. So,
Rat's the best. Change my mind.
Look, let's bring the Lizard King in here. Let's talk. Let's get this dialed in, man.
You think he's heard this Lizard King stuff before?
Oh, come on, right? It's got to be like if I'd have a t-shirt and that would be my nickname on it, man. Just Lizard King. I'd have people at work call me that. Let's just say that, right?
Well, do you think he's a fan of Jim Morrison?
That's a tough question, man. We're gonna have to get to the bottom.
We're gonna questions of the soul. We're gonna have to lift up the hood. We're gonna have to lift up the hood on Jim Morrison and figure this out.
Yeah, 100%. We've got to get to the bottom of this. So let's open the doors. Let's let him in the room, and let's get to the bottom of some burning questions, Mike Freeman. Live on the richest men in town.
Jim Morrison, welcome to the richest men in town. All of your dreams are about to come true. How are you, brother?
Good, man. My life is now complete. Now I'm on this show.
You can check the box.
Yeah, we hear that a lot on this show, for crying out loud.
We hear that a lot, Tyler.
I have arrived.
We hear that a lot in all aspects of our life.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Jim, we've got super important questions of the soul to start off and ask you about.
Sure.
Are you a fan of your namesake, Jim Morrison, aka the Lizard King?
Absolutely. How can you not be? I mean,
all right.
What's funny is my parents later on in life claimed to have known, but thought he was dead long enough where it wouldn't matter. But no, exactly. It's funny. I've gotten lots of free stuff, and I've heard many of crazy stories. People that have done many of things with Jim Morrison and wild times, and seen his grave in Paris. And my favorite was I was in Vegas with some college buddies, and we pull up to this place, and I give my ID, and the guy's like, "Your name's Jim Morrison?" I said, yeah. He's like, the Lizard King? I was like, of course. And he says, how about a king bed for the Lizard King?
Nice.
And so he comped me a free hotel room. So yeah, can't complain.
Man, Tyler, we're
See?
always asking, right? What's in a name? What's in a name? Like, hey, folks, name your kid Jim Morrison. Come on.
We're crying out loud.
Things are going to happen. I bet you when you're in a Starbucks and they're like, Jim Morrison, people turn around and be like, hey.
No, we were joking.
Just in case.
We should name our kids like Van.
Yes.
And like Mark Morrison. I don't know if you know that song, Return of the Mac. That's Mark Morrison. But I was like, we could have kept this thing going for generations.
Well, hey, I don't want to date you, but right around that 7th grade makeout session, Val Kilmer might have been doing his thing.
Yeah, so I don't remember exactly when it came out, but it was somewhere around that time. I think it might have been a year or two later.
Yeah, so you might have had a good little run there with some wind in your sails.
It was very good. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. It was like some serious gas thrown on that flame. I love it, man. Let me ask you another really important question, Jim. I'm curious about your take on the Doobie Brothers.
You know, they're okay, but of all the classic rock bands, they're not very good. I mean, there's so many better ones.
I see, Mike. So look, Jim, you're the third one who's had the same take. Man.
Mouth of 2 or 3, right? That's it.
That's right, man.
That's it.
All right, now
everything's established.
The follow-up question to that is, Willie.
Hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
Prepare yourself, Tyler, because this one, it's a 50-50.
It is. I got you. Willie Nelson, give me your take.
He might be one notch above the Doobie Brothers, but definitely not more than 2.
All right, well, you can't win them all, Jim, I guess.
Well, it's been real, guys. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
concludes our show.
Let's just make sure our audience understands that we didn't bring Jim in because he's a music critic. He's not like Siskel and Ebert of music. So
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
We appreciate your comments and your opinions, but the opinions stated on this program are the sole, right? They're the sole opinions of the hosts and the guests, and they're not really worth much. So.
This is very true. This is very true.
Do you have an update on the baseball score, Jim? Because like I've got a diehard Dodgers fan, and he is putting it on the altar of sacrifice and not watching what could be a rough night.
It's not going well for the Dodgers right now. They are down 5-1, I believe, or 5-2. But yeah, I think it's 5-2 now. But it's in the 8th inning, and Atlanta's bringing all their guns in to try to shut them down. But Atlanta got out on them early, a couple home runs back to back in the 2nd inning, I think it was, and they haven't looked back.
Yeah, we're gonna have to hold out for some dramatics in Atlanta.
Well, they had some dramatics last night or the last game.
Yeah.
I mean, they were down by this similar score and came roaring back.
Yeah, they've got it in them. I don't know that they've got it in them anymore for this series, but they, stranger things.
If only we had evidence of somebody coming from 3-1 down. Maybe Cubs 3-1 2016. Look it up.
It all comes back to the Cubs.
Look it up.
Although we could also reference the Red Sox coming back on the Yankees, right? Down 3-1. That was pretty dramatic. That might have been
3-0.
I think it might have been 3-0. I think you're right, actually. I think you're right.
Which is all the more dramatic. So
yeah.
You know what? It's impossible till someone does it. So
this is true.
All good.
Well, we're excited to have you here, Jim. We appreciate you putting up with our Doobie brother questions, and we're going to edit out your comments about Willie Nelson, and so this show will just move right along, No, but in all honesty, we are excited to have you here, and I'm curious of your thoughts when we have a mutual friend, Dave Specht, and I know that Dave told you a little bit about our show. He's been a guest on our show a couple times, actually.
Friend of the program.
Talk to us. Yeah, friend of the program. What goes through your head when you hear from your friend Dave, and then from our friend Mike Freeman here. They say, hey, you know what? We've got a podcast called Richest Men in Town, and we think you're the man that needs to be on that show.
Well, first thought was this must be a pretty sorry podcast if you're asking me to come on it.
Man, you're a good judge of character.
Yeah.
You're a good judge of character.
Not necessarily.
No, but honestly, my first reaction was kind of humbled. I just was not expecting that, and Dave's somebody that I have the utmost respect for. Him. He's one of my good friends, and one of the guys I probably look up to the most in my life. And so for him to, say that he's been on the show and thought highly enough of me to think that I would be a good guest on it was pretty humbling.
Well, I think you're in good company, and we had the opportunity the other night to spend a few minutes together and just kind of get to know you a little bit. And I'm excited for the lessons that we'll learn together tonight. I think that when we have a chance to bring people together who are just trying to live life right and going through the journey, I think that there's some good things that'll come of it. Even if we disagree on some things musically, right? I mean, it's just
gonna happen.
It's how it goes, man. It's gonna happen, man. So.
It's gonna happen. Let's get on some common ground, Tyler. You good with
please.
that?
Yeah.
Hey Jim, what are your thoughts on The Bachelor?
Oh, I love it.
So no, that was. I feel like credibility is low right now with Willie Nelson and then The Bachelor. Like
it's like he understands. He understands what moves people, right?
This is true.
No, it was funny because I think the first episode that I checked out after Dave told me about the show, and I didn't even I think I just randomly picked one or whatever. But yeah, Mike, you were going off on The Bachelor and expressing your love for it, and I was like, man, this is a guy that I can jive with, man. This is top notch quality podcasting right here.
Love it. Hey, Chris Harrison's got to come back.
Oh, I know that. I mean, I got my own thoughts, but probably should keep it off the record for that. But yeah, it's a shame, man. I just he makes the show, and it's just not the same without him.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is. Is he one of the Bachelors? What do we got going on with this?
There's some cancel culture going on. I think.
Okay. I think I've read that actually.
Yeah, he was the host. Yeah,
he had to take a break.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around, man. People getting asked to take breaks. You dig up some 10-year-old emails. You may be asked to take a break. That's just how.
I imagine if everybody had full access to all of our lives, though, man. I mean, the skeletons that they could dig up on just about anybody. I mean, we'd all be taking breaks.
Well, Jim, actually, can you said when you were mentioning the respect that you have for Dave, and I love Dave, and I just want to point out to everyone that's listening, we're guys and gals on the show. When the invitation comes out, Jim, that's not your calling an election made sure, right? That's just something somewhere you did over time consistently helps somebody along, right? And that those lower lights on the shore help other people just trying to get home. So this isn't a game of we're going to take Jim and we're going to put him on a pedestal, or we're going to take Tyler and Mike and put us on pedestals. We are people. We are people that are we're broken, right? And I think that's kind of how God does his thing. And I think I love what you're saying there, because I think that's, for me, I don't feel like I'm anything special, and I feel like I've made plenty of mistakes in my life, more than my fair share. And I think if there's anything that kind of defines me, it's I haven't let those mistakes or those failures, dictate who I was going to be forever. And I think my life is something where I try to just be raw and genuine and real. And I think because I am, I think people feel like I'm genuine and they can relate to it, it's like, oh, this is a guy that's made his mistakes, is like me, but he's still going, he's still pushing forward. Yeah. And so if anything, that's probably why I've been able to kind of be in a position to hopefully help others or get them to see things a little bit differently, because I've made a lot of mistakes and had my fair share of failures. Yeah. The other night, family prayer. Sorry, Abe, I'm going to throw you under the bus. My son, Abe, is saying the family prayer, and he mentions 4 or 5 times how grateful he is for for the Savior, and we'll try again tomorrow, and we'll try to be better. And so the dad in me is like, wonder what happened today. So at the end of at the conclusion of the family prayer, we just have a little counsel, like, hey, where are we at? And I think that there's a fine balance, right? We want to acknowledge our faults, but we don't want to stew in them. We don't want to beat ourselves up about things, right? And I think that, sometimes, Tyler, we're talking about that self-talk a lot. And, before you got on, Jim, I shared a quote from an Eleanor Roosevelt. The day you stop contributing is the day you start dying, and we just feel like, man, that feels pretty extreme.
Just a little
extreme. Yeah. And it's hard to tell what a contribution looks like, right?
Yeah, I think that's the point, right? I mean, it does sound extreme, because I think there's a lot of people that will hear that and be like, then I'm out, man. Right. Like I'm not contributing anything at this point. And I think it's interesting because, we've had guest after guest after guest on this show, and on the invitation, they say, I don't really have anything to offer. Right. And then we get into a conversation and it's like, well, shoot, there's the things that I've gone through. And then post show, we get messages via email and every other way about, man, this person just shared these things that changed my life. And I'm thinking the contribution was living life, right? It wasn't the invention. It wasn't the business. It wasn't any of those things. It was just living life and getting through things. That was the contribution. And that was the thing that changed other people's lives. And so when you say, Jim, shoot, I've made mistakes, and I've, and I'm hoping that there's some people that can learn, but I guarantee you, Dave Specht calls Mike Freeman and says, you guys got to meet Jim Morrison, not because, anything other than this guy is living life and he's living it the right way. And so when we hear that, when Mike and I hear that,
he's walking the walk.
We get excited about it, because I think that's what I think that today, in the day that we live in, that's what people need to hear, is just, if we live life and we're trying to do it as best we can, that good things are going to happen, right? That's the contribution. What was the Helen Keller quote? Life is a daring adventure or nothing.
Or nothing.
And right, there's that other extreme quote. But Mike and I were talking about this before the show. Maybe the daring adventure is a single mom waking her kids up at 5 a.m. to get them out the door to go to school, and then going to work all day and coming home and falling asleep on the couch after she's spent time with her kids. To me, that's the adventure, And I think people. So we're excited you're here, Jim, because we want to hear your adventure, man.
I love how you say that, because I think so often there's this pressure that either we put on ourselves or in the culture we kind of grow up in, whether it's through church or society or social media or whatever it is, that everything's got to be this perfect facade, and everybody's great. I remember going to church when I was little and looking at my friends' parents, and oh, these are great people and wonderful, and they got their stuff together. And then I grow up and I find out that this one's an addict, and they got divorced, and this guy was abusive, and this one couldn't hold down a steady job, and you're like, what? I thought these guys were perfect.
Yeah.
And I just think that so oftentimes we have this pressure on ourselves too, right? Where, man, we got to be on our game 100% of the time, when the reality is like, man, we all are struggling.
Yeah.
We all got our demons. We all got these battles between our ears, like trying to figure out what to do, and these doubts and these things. And, we have our moments where, yeah, maybe in public we got this nice face on and the smile on our face, but man, the wee hours of the morning when life gets heavy and those demons are running through your head, and those doubts, and you're feeling it and you're struggling.
Yeah, I totally agree. You mentioned something earlier. You said, you talked about being transparent and vulnerable, right? And putting yourself out there. And man, I think that's so important. I think that if we can have these kind of conversations, if we had these kind of conversations on a regular basis throughout different settings in our lives, man, it would be a different animal, right? But I'm guilty of it because I get up in the morning, I walk into a meeting, right? And I'm like, all right, let's put on the face. Here we go. Let's put on, here's what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to do it. This is my delivery. And here we go. Right. And I think,
that the challenge though, Tyler, the challenge though, is like, can we identify those spaces that are essential in our lives for us to lower those masks?
Right. Absolutely.
Right? We don't wear a mask with our spouse.
100%.
We don't get on our knees and put a mask on.
Right.
But, or it's, I throw that out there, but sometimes we might.
Sure.
Right. And that's defeating the purpose, right? He knows, our wife knows probably.
And sometimes we might, I would say that we do, right? I would say that that's natural, right?
Yeah.
There's times where it's like, maybe we don't want to face whatever the demon is, or the thing that we, there's something out there that we're just like, I'm not ready to stare that one in the eye yet, But I think that when we can have conversations with other people and someone says, you know what I'm dealing with right now? This thing. And then you start to think, well, shoot, if Mike Freeman can stare that thing in the eye, maybe it's time that I did some work,
we're not condoning, but it's normalizing the struggle.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember somebody was talking to me. It's like, if one of your buddies called you and told you that they were struggling with something, what would your reaction be? Would you not talk to them anymore? Would you disown them? Would you run? Or would you do anything to help them? And I was like, of course I'd help them. And then he kind of posed a question. So then why are you so hesitant to share what you're struggling with?
Yeah.
Right. And I think if you think about that thought, we tend to have these fears where, man, if I share this, I'm not going to be accepted, or I'm not going to be loved. When the reality is when we break those walls down and we actually do share, that's where like real intimacy happens. And you actually do feel more acceptance and love than you ever would feel holding it in.
Absolutely. And there's a deeper connection that's built between you and that person, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially your spouse, right? Like, I mean, I think I was guilty of that for a long time, and it really messed with my marriage. I'll be honest. Me kind of holding things in and not being as transparent as I should have been with things that I was struggling with or feelings I had, because, I needed to be strong. I needed to be that support for my wife. I can't let her know that I struggle too. But that actually created more walls and barriers and hurt my marriage more than anything. And so when I finally realized that, man, when I was open and I can actually express these things to her, our marriage was never better than those times.
Amen. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that that's something that maybe we let traditions, societal pressures, roles, right, where we think, well, this is who I got to be. Chaos is happening. I've got to be the guy that you just stack it on my shoulders. Don't worry, I've got it all. And then we go and cry off in the corner by ourselves, when the reality is you've got someone standing next to you who is as strong, if not stronger, that's willing to take on.
And who knows?
Yeah. Right.
They know something's not right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Whether that's your spouse, whether that's a close friend, whether that's God, right? We're not hiding anything.
Yeah.
Those people.
Right.
What you're really saying is, I don't trust you.
Yeah. And have you ever been in that situation where you've said to your spouse or a close friend, or, hey, I need help? Right. When that comes out, things change dramatically, right? Go back to your point, Jim. A friend calls you and says, I need help. What are you going to do? I mean, shoot, I'd jump on the next plane. You know what I mean? I'd be there tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And it changes everything. Right. And I think that there's some real power in the ability and the humility to be able to say, I need help, or I don't think I could do it. Right. And then boom, the Calvary comes out. which is exciting. And that's when you really get to see, Mike. I think Mike and I were having a conversation one time. We had a mutual friend who was struggling in a relationship, and he didn't tell anybody. We didn't know. Mike called me one night and he said, "Gosh, you believe this is happening?" And we're talking about it. And Mike said, "I want you to know, if things go south, I'm calling you right away." And I thought, yeah, that's what we should do, right? And I appreciated that reminder from Mike that, yeah, it's that ability to say, "Hey, help me," that pushes us up to a different level, and it raises our relationship to a different level with whoever that person is.
Yeah, think of that elders quorum move, right? Think of that elders quorum move, and you walk up and it's like, "Oh man, piano. Oh man, fridge. Oh man, washer." And you go to lift that thing, and you don't have this. You don't have this by yourself. You need some help, or you're gonna have a hernia, right?
Yeah.
But in life, sometimes we start to pick up this heavy thing, and it's really heavy, but we don't stop.
Right.
We don't stop and say, "Hey, I need some help with this thing."
Yeah. Yeah.
We just grind, and
what's interesting is, you're talking about this, and the story of Peter walking on water just runs through my head. And I remember reading it and thinking about it a little bit differently one time, where, here Peter is, and he sees the Savior walk on water after everyone's scared and all that part, but he realizes who it is. And what's his reaction? Dude jumps out of the boat and wants to walk on water, right? And what does he do? He does it. And he's just full of faith, right? And I think there's times in our life where that mimics us, right? Where we're so full of faith, we can do anything, and we're just walking on water. And then what happens? The storms of life start kicking in, and things happen. And then what does he do, right? He starts sinking. But the cool thing is, right in that verse, it says, "And immediately," not like in a little bit, but immediately the Lord reaches out and grabs him and saves him.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing is, yeah, man, we're going to have times of faith, but as soon as we need it, there's people, whether it's the Savior himself or others that are around us, that are immediately going to jump in there and save us.
Yeah. 100%. And it totally, it makes me think of that Spencer W. Kimball quote, right? That the Lord answers prayers, but it's through other people that those prayers are going to be answered, right? And sometimes you spend time on your knees praying about whatever that is, and then you walk out the front door, and you're not going to tell anyone else, right? It's just a one-on-one thing, and today the Red Sea will part, and this thing will go away, when the reality is that answer is probably going to come through somebody else at some point, right?
Yeah, but heaven is built. One of the pillars is that agency, right? And in that case of Peter, Christ is watching Peter sink. And in that moment, when Peter says, right, "Help me," the help comes.
That's it.
And I think many times he's not going to rip the problem out of our hands.
Right.
But man, if we give it to him, right?
Yeah.
If we let him in, "Hey, I'm dealing with this thing," he'll say, let's give you the strength to overcome it. Let's give you the strength to carry it. Let's give you some help to carry those burdens. But great conversation. We gotta get to know this Jim Morrison character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Jim, talk to me a little bit. Are you a fan of It's a Wonderful Life with our hero George Bailey?
I saw it once when I was younger, and that is unfortunately the only time I've ever seen it. Right, well, I usually go for Elf or Christmas Vacation or one of the more tasteful movies.
Well, we were going to name this show a quote from Christmas Vacation, but we thought better of it. It didn't make it past the censors, but
yeah. So, Jim, I hate to go old school commitment pattern on it, but I can tell you right now, Christmas Eve, NBC, it's on. Will you watch It's a Wonderful Life this year?
I will probably not watch it on Christmas Eve because we got our Christmas vacation tradition that we watch on Christmas Eve. But I will commit to watching it sometime during the Christmas season.
Okay, thank you.
That's perfect.
Griswold over George. Griswold over George.
Griswold is a hero of sorts.
He's a national hero, man. I don't know how you can put anybody above Clark Griswold.
No,
I do love me some Clark Griswold.
He brings the family together at the end. You gotta give him that. It's a rough Christmas, but he does it.
Well, okay. George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, the story goes back to when he was a young boy, and we learn a little bit about George and the life that he's living. So, Jim, as our guest on The Richest Men in Town, we'd like to take it back. So where does your story start? Talk to me about growing up. Talk to me about parents, about early influences. Where are we at?
Yeah, no. So I was actually born in Southern California in Camp Pendleton. My parents were living in a little town called Fallbrook. My dad was in the Marine Corps, served 20 years. I'm one of 6 kids. I'm number 5. And so for a good part of my brothers and sisters' early years, they were bouncing around the country and doing all that. And actually, shortly after I was born, my dad got stationed in Okinawa. So I spent first couple of years kind of in between Hawaii and Japan. Don't remember any of it, but apparently I took my first steps and on foreign soil and some things like that.
Nice.
But came back and we moved around a little bit. By the time I started kindergarten, it was in Fallbrook, which is North San Diego County, and pretty much grew up the rest of my life there. So, great
Dad
parents.
Dad is a Marine. What was that like?
So, yeah, so he was a Marine. He did a lot of like PR, and he was a lawyer. He went to school and got his law degree. And so when I was 8 years old, he retired and decided to start his own business. And so I got to live the military life of hand-me-downs and beat up cars and, not living much. And then I saw my dad struggle and start his own business, and for years kind of hobble along and barely make ends meet. But you could see him putting in the hours and putting in the time, and he just was happier. His whole life, I think he kind of wanted to do things a little bit differently. And under the Marine Corps, it's so much discipline and here and now, and you got to be here. And I think that helped him. But when he finally got a chance to kind of spread his wings, he did. And, after a few years of struggle, ended up being very successful in what he did. And so I think it was cool because I always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial bug in me from the very early times where
Tyler,
my dad
any
starts
guys
his
like
business.
that?
Yeah, I know a few of them, man.
The hustle.
No, but it was funny because when I was younger, seeing my dad do this, I remember going to it was the Price Club back then before Costco was Costco, and
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I remember going there, and my mom had to buy like snacks for the baseball fields or whatever, and they had a box of blow pops. Remember those things?
Oh yeah.
The green apples are just amazing.
I still hit the blow pops.
Yeah.
And but it was a box of 100 for $6, and I was like, what? Because they were selling them for like a quarter a piece. So I'm thinking in my mind, man, if I sell these for a quarter a piece, that's $25. That's $19 profit. So I convinced my mom to buy me a box of blow pops, and I told her that I would sell them and make money, whatever. And I think she was a little skeptical, but I told her I'd pay her back. So she buys me this box of blow pops, and of course I ate probably 20 of them, whatever. But I sold them, and I sold out in one day. And so then the next time she went, she bought 3 or 4 boxes, with my profits or whatever, and I sold them out in like a day and a half. And so I ended up selling like blow pops and stuff at school. I did some creative marketing where I gave the cute girls for some for free, and they were the popular cool girls, and they were eating blow pops. Everybody wanted blow pops. So then I just set up shop in between classes. And so we had this East Coast field trip, and I pretty much raised enough money selling blow pops to go on this trip. And I was really big into baseball cards and stuff. So I was buying baseball cards like crazy. But yeah, it was
And the
you know, just little things like that.
school administration didn't sniff that out and shut it down.
You know, the next summer, I thought I had raised it up a notch, and I had my mom buy me Skittles and all this other candy, and I stocked my locker. And after like a day and a half, they shut me down, man. I think I made like $200 in one day, and they were like, "Nope, no more, done."
I think in every school, there's that guy, right? I mean, I remember buying blow pops and the 5-pack of Now and Laters from the kids, man.
Come on, Now and Laters.
I love me some Now and Laters.
Mystery Mix, that green purple one.
Stop! I mean, this can't be beat, man. You can't be beat.
Okay, now the kids listening to the program.
Oh yeah.
Hold on, the kids listening to the program, Now and Laters today are not the same.
No, man,
they're not the same.
Because back then you could roll into 7-Eleven and you could do the bottom rack on the candy aisle. It had the 5-cent bins. The Now and Laters, man. Woo.
Hey, on that Fun Dip bit, did you eat the stick?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. You got to eat the stick.
Was awesome, man. Yeah.
Who doesn't eat the stick?
There are people.
They just dip and then they're done.
And then it gets smaller, right? It gets smaller because you're doing your business, but then they just throw the stick away, and it's like no.
I'm like the owl on the Tootsie Roll, man. I dip and then I eat it, and I'm like, well, there's a ton of this dust left, but that stick was delicious.
Fun dip.
All right, we got way off.
Half the people eat the stick on the blow pop too.
Well, sometimes you can't help but get that little nub in the gum. You can't get it off. You just eat it. You go.
You know what? I can remember where I was the first time I realized that sometimes that stick is just rolled paper. Have you ever come to that discovery?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I'm not
but
telling you anything
different.
You don't know.
It's got flavor, man. It's got some kind of flavor. And when it swells up because it's been liquefied, man, that thing is.
Yeah. Good stuff,
Blow pops and Fun Dip. Where were we?
All right, so let me get us back on track, Jim, because Jim was the entrepreneur in school selling blow pops. So tell me about your dad. Sounds like he was an example of hard work for sure.
Definitely.
Sacrifice, probably for sure, with the Marine Corps. What other lessons are you learning from watching your dad and from watching your mom growing up in your life?
Yeah, no, I mean, two amazing people, but very different. I mean, my dad, I could go on for a long time about his contributions in my life, but I think that alone, where he just worked hard, and he was very disciplined, and he used to kind of tell us, if you just go where you're supposed to go, show up on time. You're supposed to show up on time, do what you're supposed to do. You'll rise to the top like cream. And that was kind of his little mindset and mantra, was just wanting us to just do what we're supposed to be doing. And you didn't have to be necessarily some incredible person or do incredible things. You just had to be that consistent force, and you'd make things happen. So that was one lesson, I think, from my dad that I learned at an early age, was just consistency with doing the small things. The other thing is, that guy loved to serve. And I think because he was so busy in other aspects of life, he didn't have a lot of time. I don't remember too many times where, he came home and we had one-on-one time. The only other one-on-one time that I ever remember with my dad growing up was he'd take me with him on different, church things, where he was going to go visit some people. And so he'd say, hey, come with me. And there was one particular assignment or calling that he had where he was helping some people down in Mexico and the Spanish Saints come across the border to go to the San Diego Temple dedication. And he'd go down and speak to these Spanish Saints and work with the leaders down there. And so he'd bring me. And so we went to Mexico probably 15, 20 times. And he'd say, okay, write a talk and I'll translate it. And I'd speak in these congregations with him in Spanish. And it was just an incredible thing. So I think my love for the Hispanic people and for languages and things was something I just picked up on at an early age. And he loved the Spanish people. And I don't think he ever called me by my name, maybe once or twice my whole life. He always called me Jaime. And he'd say, Jaime, ven aquí. And he just talk to me in Spanish like that, right? And so, you know, I think something like that, where you have somebody who just loves these people. And you know, we used to say my dad was born with the wrong color of skin, but it was amazing. So I grew up loving those things. But yeah, so he was just somebody who loved people, and I mean, had his own kind of political views and very conservative, but it didn't matter what your views were. It didn't matter what your race was. It didn't matter what your age was. He just loved everybody. And later on in life, he became the selfie king. And we used to joke that until he took a selfie with you, you weren't friends, but he would probably take a selfie with you the first time he met you. And, you know, whether it was the waitress at the Chinese restaurant or the flight attendant or whoever, that guy would just start talking to people, and it was awesome.
How about mom?
Oh man, she was just stalwart, man. She pretty much raised us kids. My dad being gone a lot or working. I mean, he worked in the home for a lot of those years, but he was so wrapped up in the business that my mom kind of did it. And she just, man, she was the disciplinarian, but just supportive. I mean, she did everything, man. She ran that house, and with 6 kids, that's not an easy task. But between keeping the house clean, I mean, I never remember the house dirty, and I pretty much every single meal growing up was home cooked, and it wasn't just some mac and cheese and throw it on the table. It was, you know, sides and vegetables and everything. I mean, it was there. So she was a homemaker at its finest, and just a great example to me. And she's one of those people who was very opinionated and had her moments where she would talk, but out in public she was very quiet and reserved. But both my parents, just, you know, the love for the Lord, and yeah, I can't remember anything. I mean, she wouldn't always be at every single sporting event, but the things that mattered, you know, church things or things that mattered most, she was always there. And so I think from a very young age that, you know, that faith in God and just prayer and just all those basic things became kind of second nature for me.
You talk about faith with kind of being modeled by dad through his service, and your mom as well through service and prayer and these different things that you witness as a young person. When does that become an important part in your own life?
You know, I think it was kind of always something, you know, and I think I had some experiences kind of early years of life and especially like adolescence, some really kind of strong, powerful experiences where those things that I kind of heard and, you know, we talked about became reality. You know, I one Christmas, my cousin and I went with my grandma to the Holy Land, and we got to see the sights, and just that whole thing came alive, right? And
hold on, back up. What?
So my grandma would take like each of our, like all the grandkids on like some kind of trip, and my brother went on some like, you know, cruise thing where they went to like Scandinavia and Russia, and one of them went to Jamaica or something. And
my grandma took me to Sizzler, I think. like that was it, man.
Sizzler.
My grandma, I don't know exactly why, but she was from Sweden, and she was a convert to the church when my dad was, I think, 14. And her husband had passed a few years before, kind of tragically. And so she had 3 kids and joining the church. And there's a whole nother life to that story, but she never remarried, never did it. And she was just an amazing woman. But towards the end of her life, she started having Alzheimer's, dementia. And we went on this trip to the Holy Land, and, you know, here's 2 teenagers that she's supposed to be kind of watching over. And the truth was, we were watching over her more than she was watching over us. But I mean, we went to Egypt first, and we got to like run through the pyramids.
What?
And it's funny because I tell my wife this one story where there's like the main entrance to the pyramid, and you walk up this nice, big, open, lighted walkway. And we're walking up, and we go up there, and they go, yeah, this is where things are, blah, blah, blah. And we're walking down, and there's like a bunch of like these like Egyptian men that are standing next to like this, like kind of entranceway on the side of this tunnel. And I'm like, what's down there? And they're like, well, this is where everything really was. That's just for the public. But if you want to see, if you give me $5, I'll take you down there. And so I like here, me and my cousin, I think I'm 15 or 16 and he's 13. We go with this strange Egyptian man down this tunnel. And it was literally like 200 feet long. And it was like, it was gotta be like a 45-degree angle. I mean, you couldn't just walk down it. It was like slanted, and they had like boards. So you'd like slide and hit a board, slide and hit a board, slide a board. And you did this for like probably 200 yards. It's like we had to have been underground. And so we go down there and we go through all these other kind of things. And he's got like this flashlight and we're behind him. We don't have any lights with us. So we can hardly see where we're going.
You're
and then
in
all
the
of a sudden,
pit of a, you're in the pit
of the pyramid
of an Egyptian pyramid.
Yes. And then we get to the bottom of this thing and he says, this is where the body and everything was really there. Like, you know, you hear about these tomb raiders and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, this thing was hidden and everything, but he said, this is where it was. And so, you know, I tried to take a few photos, whatever, when it was dark, they didn't turn out. It was back in the days with flash. So basically just like a bright box or something like that. But my wife, like, she always like, you went with some strange Egyptian man down. Like, well, he could have like done all kinds of things to you. I was like, that was a different time. But I mean, no thought to it, right? Like that was an adventure, man. And so, I mean, we had these adventures and got to sail on the Nile. And
from Egypt, you go to Jerusalem?
Yeah. So we went through, I think we went to like Jordan and Lebanon, like day trips. And then we ended up to Israel. And so then we stayed at the Jerusalem Center there and kind of went through all the sites. I mean, we went to the Red Sea and the Dead Sea and got to swim in those. And, you know, we'd go and we'd have these like kind of lectures where they talk about the Bible and then we'd go and visit these places and they just come to life.
That's incredible.
And so I remember very vividly the Garden Tomb. And I remember sitting there and I mean, here I've been at church my whole life. And I just remember seeing that Garden Tomb and feeling like, man, like there is no question that he rose from the dead. He lives. Like I just feel it. And I don't think I've ever doubted that ever since. It was just, you know, one of those, I guess you can, you know, like you guys call these hinge moments where I just felt it. I just knew.
And I love that. I love that. And
were you looking for it, Jim?
You know, I don't think so. I mean, not that I wasn't like, I mean, look, I was kind of a little bit different in terms of my rebellion in my younger years, because like, I was one of those, like, I wanted to understand things that nobody could understand. So like, you know, we go to seminary and we were church and they talk about Isaiah or the book of Revelation and nobody could understand. It's always confusing and hard to read. And those were the ones that I loved, right? Like I remember buying this, I had my mom like buy me this book for Christmas about Isaiah. And I just studied Isaiah for like months and read this like 500-page book to try to have Isaiah come to life. And so I think like, you know, there's so many verses of scripture in there about the Savior that I think I you know, I've always had a great love for him. And I think just being there, I mean, because we went to all these other places, but that one specifically, it just hit different. You know, it wasn't, you know, like where he was born, it was very kind of commercialized. It was weird. It was just kind of these weird candles and different stuff. But that one was just almost left alone. It was just this nice little kind of garden and plants. And you just see this place in the middle right there. There's a hole and you go in and there's a little tomb. And it was just, it was powerful.
That's a bucket list. That's a bucket list right there, brother.
But have you been to Sizzler? I mean, really? Can we have that?
so you know what's funny is I don't know if you've ever been to Fallbrook, but Fallbrook.
I have actually. Yes.
It does not. It's a little better now. There's actually some decent restaurants here, but growing up there was nothing. And Fallbrook was such a sleepy town that by like 7-8 o'clock at night, everything in town was shut down. I mean, the only thing that was open was like 7-Eleven, And it wasn't even 24 hours a day, dude. Like they couldn't even keep 7-Eleven open 24 hours a day. I think it was like the hours was like 7 in the morning to 11 at night or something. It was the only 7-Eleven I've ever heard of that actually closed. So, but the nicest restaurant in town, well, they opened it up, was Sizzler.
There it is, man.
That was like when and I'm sure part of it was because my family didn't have a lot of money at early times, but dude, if it was somebody's birthday or something special, we would go to Sizzler. And I mean, that was the biggest treat in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have amazing, that bread is just unreal, right? But the rest of the
you throw down those popcorn shrimp, man.
But I remember having a conversation with my wife, and I was like, man, remember when Sizzler used to be like high end? And she was like, no, it was never high end. I was like, but no, that was high end. That was like where we would go. And I mean, that was like, man, that cost
celebrate
so much
some
money.
Accomplishments, man. Come on now. Oh, that's funny.
So
that's
yeah,
funny.
Sizzler holds a fond place. I think I spent a couple birthday dinners there, man.
I love it, man.
So Jim, before we move on past your parents, how do you honor your mom and dad?
Oh, my dad actually passed a few years back.
Okay.
And I think I mentioned to you guys the other night when we were talking, but he was a great man. A lot of people knew him, but he died in a plane crash of all things. Oh. And just kind of tragically. And, it's funny we talk about this because the topic we started with about asking for help, I rarely did that. And, I had my reasons, I think, growing up. And I think when you're on the younger side of family, you kind of tend to go to your brothers more than your parents in some respect. But I probably can count on one hand the number of times I went to my dad and asked him for advice or, really kind of talked to him about that. Not that he didn't give me advice unsolicited. He did that plenty of times, right. but where I actually went to him with something that maybe 2 or 3 times, but the night before he passed, and granted, he died in a plane crash. So I had no idea that was going to happen. But the night before he passed, I was, one of my kids was sick, and I was dealing with struggles, and I had gotten asked to kind of serve in this calling in church that was heavy, and I was feeling probably the most overwhelmed feeling I've ever felt in my life. Just, I don't know if I can do all of this. And so I called him, and I, woe is me. And I told him my story and why it was so hard. And he recounted a story of himself when he was, younger. He had 2 kids. He knew he was going to go to Vietnam for the war, and, all the stuff. He was in school and all these things that were happening. And he got asked to do similar thing type in church. And he said that he had also kind of gone to somebody and did the same thing. Woe is me. Why are they asking me to do this? I don't have time for this kind of stuff. And the guy looked at him and just said, Carl, so what? So what if this is all going on? Just do what you're supposed to do, and, it'll work out. And so then my dad says, so Jimmy, I'm going to tell you the same thing. So what? Everybody's got struggles. Everybody's got problems. If they ask you to do it, you just do it. And you go where you're supposed to go, and you do what you're supposed to do. And, that's it. I have this conversation, and honestly, it didn't feel very warm and fuzzy, but, he told me he loved me, and I told him I loved him. And that meant a lot to me to be able to have that conversation. And then, come to find out, I was the last family member that talked to him. And that was the last conversation that one of us had with him. And so for my dad specifically, that those words have kind of taken on a life of their own, where, little did I know that the challenges that I was facing at the time were a mere fraction of what I was going to be facing in just a few more months. And those words have really kind of come to my mind a lot. So what? So what if you're struggling? Like, everybody's got something, right? Whether they're going through a divorce or they're going through, they're married, but they're lonely, or they got kids with health challenges, or they got health challenges, or someone just passed, or, they just lost their job, or, their financial troubles. I mean, if you talk to every single person, like everybody's got something that makes them feel the same kind of feeling. And so, I think when we look at it from that point of view, like not to be like, because he didn't mean it to be cold or harsh, but at the same time, it was kind of like just a reality check. So it doesn't Jim, matter that we're struggling.
And I love that, actually, that so what, right? We all have struggles. I mean, so, we'll all, the three of us here will acknowledge that everybody's got struggles, right? And we're all dealing with something. How do you deal when things are hard?
I think going back to those same lessons I learned from my dad at an early age was just those small, consistent things, right? Just every day taking the few steps in the right direction that you're supposed to take. And I think, like when I try to think about my struggles in terms of the big picture, honestly, it's so overwhelming where it's almost paralyzing. But if I just look at an hour ahead and say, okay, what do I need to do in the next hour? I need to make this phone call. I need to do this. I need to run this errand. I need to do this one thing. Then it becomes manageable. And so I think just taking a few steps here and there, and just being consistent, right? So like for me, every day I try to wake up around the same time. I try to have this morning routine where I, read my scriptures or meditate for a few minutes and try to work out. And then I, then my kids wake up and it's craziness and get into school and work and the rest of the day. But just that simple time in the morning before everybody gets up and everything happens is just some quiet time and just a few steps, man. So I think that's for me, the biggest thing is just focusing on today.
I'm sorry about your dad. How's your mom doing?
It's funny because she was dealing with some health challenges of her own. And so right after kind of everything she had a back issue, she had hip surgery and, all these other things, but she's actually doing amazing. I mean, she's just doing great. And, a few days, or I guess probably like a week and a half after my dad passed, she got a call from her bishop and said, we'd like to call you the Relief Society president. I know this is probably the worst possible timing, but I can't shake this feeling. And she took on that assignment. It's probably been the best thing for her. She's just kind of forced her to get out and help others and think about that. And she's just doing amazing.
That's awesome.
I mean, I love my mom, and she's, anybody that knows her just knows that she's just a great example to all of us.
Sounds like she gets that so what principle pretty well too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a young man. You've been to the Holy Land, right? You've had that experience at the Garden Tomb. What does faith look like as you're leaving high school?
So, before I go too far, there's a couple other, moments I think where it was like every Christmas for like 3 or 4 years, we kind of had these big major hinge points, I guess. One of them, my family, my dad, I mentioned going down to Mexico, but he wanted to take the family down there, and he was doing some other work, not church related, but doing some work down there. And so we went down to Mexico, kind of in the heart of Mexico, not like in these, vacation spots or anything, but, and we were taking a bus one night from one of these towns, Guanajuato to Zacatecas, and kind of in the middle of nowhere. And halfway through this little, what was supposed to be a 4-hour bus ride, we stopped in this town, picked up a few people. And then about a half hour outside of town, this time it's probably like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, right? This guy runs up to the front of the bus and with a gun shoots a hole through the roof and says this is a hijack. And so we get hijacked on this bus.
Okay, I'm hearing hijack and laughter.
Yeah.
Well, because it's almost too good to be true, right? So yeah. At the time it's me and one of my brothers, and then my little sister and my mom and my dad, right? And so my brother and I are sitting on the right side of the bus, and they're sitting on the left. And yeah, so all of a sudden this guy shoots a hole through the roof, says it's a hijack, and a few miles later takes us off the beaten track and takes us out to the middle of nowhere. And over the course of like 8 or 10 hours, we all get off the bus and we're laying face down in the dirt. And yeah, so they're going person by person and wanting to take all of our stuff, right? Our money, our watches, jewelry, whatever we have. And what's funny is my dad was giving up everything, right? Yeah, take it all, yeah, right. And my mom was tucking her wedding ring in her mouth and hiding everything and all this stuff. But when I'm on the bus, and granted, I'd been to Mexico a few times and I understood decent Spanish, but like,
how old are you at this time?
Probably like 16, 15, 16, something like that, right? Like maybe I was 17, but I remember thinking to myself, okay, what do I need to get out of here? Right? Like immediately it was like survival mode. And so I think to myself, okay, my mom gave us like this credit card, like in case of emergencies. And so I'm like, if I can just put this credit card in my shoe, I can give up my wallet and he'll take whatever else. But if I get the credit card and we can get out of here, we can buy a place to get out of here, right? And I'm like, and I need my flashlight. And I had a flashlight in my backpack. So I took my flashlight and I took my credit card and I put one in each shoe and gave up everything else. I had a Shark watch. I don't know if you remember those bad boys, but
oh yeah,
my son has one. They're back.
Oh, with a leash. I mean, that was like my prized possession, right? And so I had to give up my Shark watch and all that stuff. But I ended up being able to use the flashlight. So after the guys, they took us all out there, and we're face down in the dirt. Our hands are above our head or on our head, and it's December, and it's not like this tropical place. So it had to have been probably 30, 40 degrees outside. I'm cold. All I had was like this undershirt on, like a white t-shirt or something, and so I started like tucking my shirt into my back, and all of a sudden I hear these guys yelling, and I look up and guns right at my face, like they thought I was reaching for something. And so, my Taco Bell Spanish came out, and I was like, muy frío. And he believed me. And I think my dad said, he's just a kid, leave him alone or something, And so they ended up leaving me alone, but we were out there forever. And then they finally had some car, like a getaway car, come and get them. Then on their way out, they shot one of the tires on the bus. And so to get the spare out, we had to take all the luggage off, and the only light we had to change this tire was my flashlight. We're out in the middle of literally nowhere. So we changed this tire and, eventually get back on the road and get back to the next bus out and the place we were supposed to go. I think it took us like 14 hours to take this, 4-hour bus ride or whatever. But I remember, wow. I remember thinking to myself, help us get out of here, right? And I think, I guess maybe when you have gun to your head or you're in the middle of Mexico getting hijacked on a bus, it requires a little bit of faith. And so I remember praying probably harder than I've ever prayed before. Just protect my family, protect my parents, protect my sister, protect me. And I didn't understand hardly anything the guy said, except for when he was giving like orders. So when he would say like, get off the bus or do this, I understood every single thing perfectly clear. But every other thing that he said, I could hardly understand any of it. And so, yeah, it was one of those moments where like, there's no doubt that like I was getting help, right? I get the tongues or whatever you want to call it, but I was able to understand the instructions exactly how I needed to understand them. And so my dad was on the one side of the bus with my mom and sister and kind of translating for them. And my other brother, he didn't speak Spanish, so I was kind of translating for us and doing that. But yeah, that was definitely one of those moments where, you kind of have to have faith, and it kind of changes you.
Getting hijacked on a bus in Mexico is not a bucket list item.
We are breaking new ground. Man.
Hold on. So let's get this lowdown. So like you've mentioned your wife a couple of times. What's her name?
Kadee.
Okay. And give us a breakdown of the kids and names and ages.
So my oldest is Blake. He's 9 years old now. a boy, and then we got all boys, 3 boys. The next one is 7. His name is Graham. And then the youngest is Ian, and he's 5. So they're 4th grade, 2nd grade, and kindergarten.
That's a busy house. That's a busy house.
Yes.
So what circumstances lead you up to meeting your wife? So
I went to college, went to BYU, graduated without being married. So I got my tuition back. No. So I was up there, and, you know, I loved the school. I loved, you know, I met some amazing friends and stuff, but I think after I graduated, it's like, it's time to get back to Southern California. So I moved back down here and was going to the singles ward and going to church and doing whatever. And she was from Utah, from Layton, but had come down here to go to school at San Diego State. And so they had these, you know, regional activities and try to get people together and stuff. And so it was actually at one of these planning meetings that we met. And the bishop was supposed to go, and the activities chair was supposed to go, and the bishop couldn't make it. And I was serving as the executive secretary, and the other 2 counselors weren't very outspoken, and he wanted to get somebody that wasn't afraid to, you know, say what needed to be said. And so he asked me to go on his behalf. And then my wife was not supposed to go. It was supposed to be somebody else, and they couldn't make it. So they asked her to go. And so both of us went to this meeting that neither of us were supposed to be at. And, you know, she was at the building that she actually went to church at. And we were about 40 minutes north, and I drove a little fast. And so we got there a little early. And so, yeah, I walked in, and she was there. And what's weird is she never goes up to anybody. She's the shy, reserved one, but she came up to me, and probably the only person she ever introduced herself to. But yeah, it was great. And the rest is history.
You said, "Hi, my name is Jim Morrison," and the rest is history.
Yeah,
that's right. But yeah, no, I mean, it was pretty much right away. I mean, we hit it off, and I kind of had this stupid rule where I would never ask for a girl's number the first time I met them. I don't know why I had that rule, but it was just, I didn't want to be one of those guys. And so I was really holding out, and you could tell like, this girl's not going to leave this thing until I ask for her number. So I'll do her a favor and ask for her number just so she can go home. And so I got her number, and I was actually kind of seeing somebody else. And, you know, we weren't exclusive or dating really much. It was just more of kind of fun. And I went to see that other person that night, and she did something, and I was like, this girl's dumb, man. What am I doing? And so I said adios to her. And then, like, the next day or a couple days later, I called up, you know, my future wife, and the first thing she says when I call, and I'm like, hey, this is Jim, you know, and she says, oh, I knew you were going to call me today.
She's confident.
That's funny. Yeah.
And so we ended up going out, I think, the next night, and I ended up making the drive down there. It was like a 50-minute drive from where I was living. I pretty much made it every single day for the next like 6 or 9 months. And then I moved a little closer and kept making the drive. But yeah, I just pretty much from then on, it was instant.
And how long have you guys been married?
It has been 16 years.
16 years. All right. Congratulations on that, man. That's a big deal. So talk to us about kids and family life and where are you at with that? You've got a busy household. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that looks like now and sort of the makeup of the house?
Yeah. So right now I run a business in healthcare, and so I'm doing my kind of own thing. My wife actually runs a food blog, like a recipe blog.
Oh, cool.
Where she's able to work from home. And
what's the name of that blog?
Oso Delicioso.
Oso Delicioso. All right. I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
My mouth's watering just thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's incredible. She's an amazing cook. I got a few extra pounds to show for it. I mean, she's an amazing photographer. So it's awesome. I mean, she just does an amazing job taking pictures of their stuff and doing that stuff. But she's able to be home, and then the kids, they go to school right now. Obviously it's back in person, which is great. it's been, last year was a struggle with doing home stuff and everything, but yeah, I mentioned to you guys when we talked a couple of days ago about their health challenges, and so yeah, our kind of family life is a little different. Our normal is not really too normal for everybody else.
Well, you had mentioned at that time when that church call came, and that conversation that you had with your father, that you were feeling a heavy load, and then you mentioned that load got heavier.
Yeah.
Right.
So about 5 years ago, so our middle son, Graham, when he was 2, he was almost 3 at the time. He had some issues where he was kind of walking with some gait issues and balance, and, just having it was kind of low muscle tone and some things like that. And so we were trying to figure out what was going on with him and seeing neurologists. And at one point he was misdiagnosed with cerebral palsy. But we just, he was just struggling. And, so we were trying to figure out what was going on with that. And then all of a sudden he had this infection that wasn't getting better. And he was just, probably for like 3 or 4 weeks, was just kind of moping around. And this was a kid that had a lot of energy, and all of a sudden he didn't have it. And so after seeing multiple doctors, they told us, there's this weird virus thing that's going around. Why don't you go down to, the hospital, Children's Hospital. And we were living in Seattle at the time. So why don't you go down to Seattle Children's and just check it out? And so we go down there and they do an x-ray, and they come in and they say, oh, he's got pneumonia. And, it looks like he has something called pleural effusion, which is basically like fluid, and it's kind of going outside the lungs. So we might need to do a chest tube and drain the fluids or whatever. So you'll probably stay here for a day or two, get that taken care of, and then hopefully you'll be feeling better. And then like an hour or so later, they come back in, and of course they had to draw labs and all that kind of stuff to get ready for this chest tube and stuff. And they come back in, and I've been working with doctors in my profession for a decade at this point, and I've never heard a doctor say I'm wrong. And this doctor comes in and she says, I'm sorry to say, but I was wrong. And so I'm thinking, what? And she's like, it's not pneumonia. And so my first reaction was kind of like this, oh, it's positive news, right? And then she looks at me and she says, his labs came back and they're consistent with somebody that has leukemia or lymphoma. And it was just like, what? And you hear about these people having cancer and other things, but you never expect it to happen to you, right? And it was literally like 2 minutes after she told me, my wife, she had like gone out to the car for something and come back in. I think she was arranging like some babysitters and stuff for the other kids. And so I'm like, come in here and sit down, and had to listen to it again as the doctor told her. And after that second time, it became real. And, over the next few days, you were so deep in it, we didn't realize how serious it was, but honestly, we probably should have lost him. He was fighting for his life. He had a tumor the size of a grapefruit in his chest. Shortly after we were admitted to the hospital, that mass in his chest started blocking off some of the arteries and the blood flow, and his whole face like swelled up. It was almost like Elephant Man. His eye sockets were swollen, and his oxygen saturation levels were super low, and they had to do this emergency surgery and all this stuff. And, looking back, they told me that, oh yeah, he was the highest risk patient in the hospital.
Oh my goodness.
And, within a week, they had showed me the x-rays, the initial x-rays, and then a week of treatments and doing these things. They showed the x-ray, they showed me the x-ray, and it's like one is just super cloudy and full, and like you can hardly see anything. And the other one is like almost perfectly clear. And of course I'm emotional, and I look over, and they're like the social worker, they were doing rounds, and the social worker, this, 30-year-old something lady, she had tears in her eyes. And I look at the nurse, and she's got the same. And then I look at the doctors, and you kind of expect it from the nurses or social workers. They're kind of known for feeling stuff, right? But then I look at the doctors, and they are too. And they just say, we've never seen such a dramatic change so fast. And just that whole process, it was just miracle after miracle after miracle. where so many different things happened over the course of the next 6 or 7 months while he was going through these intense treatments. And it messes with you, but it's a powerful faith experience, right? And so he had just kind of gotten to the point where he was somewhat stable when that health thing happened with my dad. And then about 5 or 6 months later, I was actually up. We had decided to move back down to San Diego to be closer to family and friends, and we're down here. And I was actually up in Orange County and doing work. And it was funny because I never, in the last year and a half, I had hardly done anything for myself fun, right? Because of everything going on with my son. And it was like, we did this work thing, and then we went go-kart racing, those fast ones, like the K1 racing stuff. And so we're doing the stuff. My wife calls and she's like, our youngest, he's feeling sick. His heart rate's up. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And it just happened to be the second year anniversary of his diagnosis, of Graham's diagnosis. And so I'm thinking to myself, my wife just has PTSD. She's just freaking out. I'm sure he's fine. And, after 15 phone calls and a half an hour, I finally agreed to come home, and so since I didn't really get a race, I raced home. I drove 100 miles an hour, and I was ready to tell my wife, it's your fault if I get a ticket, And I had some man aggression. I needed to get out on the track.
Right.
And so, we never fight about the kids' health and stuff ever. And I think the 1 or 2 times we did were the times that she was right, where there was something wrong. So I get home and I take him in, and I'm ready to just tell my wife, he's fine. I can't believe you made me miss go-kart racing for this, and so I'm positive that nothing's wrong, nothing major at least. Right. So we get to the ER and they do an x-ray and they do some labs, and the doc comes in and he says, oh, so looks like on the x-ray, your son has pneumonia. And I was just like, you have got to be kidding me. And I was like, I know you think it's pneumonia, but I need you to do labs and check to see if it's cancer. And he looked at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, maybe I'm having PTSD myself, but 2 years ago, this day, this is what happened. I was like, I'm not leaving here until you do labs and check. And they come in and they kind of begrudgingly agreed to do it. I even told them I'd pay out of my own pocket if they wouldn't get it approved, but I wasn't leaving. And so they do labs, and the doctor didn't come back. And nobody, the nurse was like, yeah, they're just trying to figure stuff out. I'm like, well, a half hour ago, you told me you were going to give me some antibiotics and send me home. And now it's been this time and no one's telling me anything. So I kind of knew, I think I got to the hospital at 9:00, and this conversation was at 10. And finally, at 2:30 in the morning, they said, we're going to move you upstairs. Looks like the pneumonia is a little worse than they thought, and we're going to keep you overnight. And I knew it wasn't. And so we got upstairs, and this poor resident, this brand new doctor, it's probably her first conversation ever, trying to tell this guy's kids got cancer. She starts talking about butterflies or I can't even remember, some weird analogy. And I was like, you know what, can you just cut the crap? I was like, a couple of years ago, my son was diagnosed with leukemia. I'm pretty sure this son has it now. Can you just pretend I'm not a parent? I'm just a colleague, and just tell me exactly what's going on. And she says, oh, okay. Yes, he has leukemia. And so, within 2 years of each other, we found out that 2 of our kids have leukemia, which is, you never think that one of your kids is ever going to have this, let alone 2. And so from then it was kind of immediately turned to, well, this must be something genetic or something. And so they did testing, and within a month or so figured out that they have this rare genetic disorder called ataxia telangiectasia, or AT is kind of the term for it. And there's only 500 kids in the US that have it. It's super rare. They call it an orphan disease because Big Pharma doesn't spend any money on research, because even if they were to find a cure, there's not enough people to make money off of it. And so it's one of these things where it has to do with the repair and recovery part of your DNA, where you're basically kind of playing shorthanded, where like a normal person has 100 of these cells that are fighting and doing these things. They have maybe 10 or 12 that are working right. And so when they get sick, it takes forever for them to get better. A simple illness can hospitalize them for a month. They have a predisposition for cancers and other infections because of that. So those mutations that normally get corrected don't. And then their kind of adolescence years, they'll go through kind of a decline in function. Most kids end up in wheelchairs. They have, shortened life expectancy and all of that. And so we obviously knew that our two youngest probably had that. But we also found out our oldest as well. And even though he hasn't had cancer and his kind of symptoms are more mild, he has it as well. And so basically all three of our kids have this rare genetic disorder. And so we basically, if we thought cancer is pretty terrible, but come to find out that this cancer is just a small fraction of what they're going to be facing their whole entire life. So that's kind of our little story in terms of their health. And
Jim, can I ask how do you and your wife,
in what ways are you asking?
I'm curious, there's a lot of people that go through some pretty traumatic things, especially when their children are involved, right? And that can have that can drive a pretty heavy wedge between a couple. I'm curious how you guys are, what that looks like for you, and how you guys are moving through this together as a couple.
What's interesting is when we first found out about Graham getting diagnosed in Seattle, they had this incredible education system where they would teach you about the disease and everything. And they did that. And then afterwards they said, we want to also talk about something else. And they shared with us some statistics. And I remember one of them stood out, and it was basically like 80% of couples get divorced when they have a child that's dealing with this. So if 80% of them that have one child get divorced, I don't know what the odds are in the math for two, but obviously it's the deck is stacked against us. And I think early on, we really felt that. I mean, I think we each kind of process things differently. And I think we both shared resentments about different things. And it didn't help that for probably 5 out of the first 7 months that Graham was diagnosed, he was living in the hospital. And so normally, in your marriage, as rough as your day is, at the end of the night, you kind of have that pillow talk and you kind of hash through things, and those things that are bothering you can kind of work out and do. And we didn't have that, and she tends to emotionally respond right away to things. And I tend to almost numb things or not respond right away. And then it all kind of hits me, and I'm, more emotional later on. And so I think both of us, because we were kind of responding differently, there was just some tough feelings there. And I think, you're in the hospital and there's no rest in the hospital. I don't know if you ever had to spend the night in the hospital, but between the noises and the nurses coming in, and, especially early on when he was going through so much, I mean, it was like I'd be able to sleep for maybe an hour, 2 consistent hours in a row at the most. And so whenever I had a free moment, I was wanting to sleep. And usually that was at night, because during the day people were coming in like crazy. Well, then my wife has, at the time we had a 4-year-old and like a 6-month-old baby. And so she's breastfeeding and up in the night and whatever. And so you know how it is when you have a new baby, you try to sleep whenever you can, grab a moment too. And so both of us were just trying to grab sleep whenever we could. And we didn't have that time. And so I think that was a real struggle. And I, at that point, there was one friend of mine, his name is Kurt, and he reached out to me, and just a couple of years before, they had lost a child who drowned in like a pool, one of those horrible stories you hear about. And he had actually gotten divorced. Things just were rough. And from that moment on, it just led to that happening. And he said, if I could go back and tell myself something, I would tell myself, the Lord will take care of your child, but it's your responsibility to take care of your wife. And I wish I could say I was a perfect husband from that point on. Far from it. But I think that was something that really stood out to me. And so I definitely think that was a moment in time where that piece of advice just helped me realize like how important it is to make sure my wife was doing okay. And I think as a father with kids, you feel things, and obviously it's emotional, but nothing competes to a mother's love. And so I think emotionally it was, it's probably the worst thing you could ever imagine somebody going through is a mother seeing her children going through that. And for her to, be at home and when her son's at the hospital was just, I think, devastating for her. So, I think, over the last 5 years, we've just kind of, I would say we probably survive more days than we thrive. And I would say there's been moments of time where we really struggle. And, but I think both of us are just committed to keep trying. And I think there's been a lot of forgiveness, a lot of tolerance, a lot of patience, a lot of very open and real conversations where our struggles and our thoughts and feelings are there. And so, one thing I love about my wife is just her perseverance. No matter how tough things get, she pushes through. And so I think that's something that I respect and love about her, and has been a big part in why we've been able to kind of keep going is because of that attribute that she has.
Well, Jim, I want to thank you for letting us in on that. Tyler, we sometimes ask the question of our guests, can you name something that you've learned the hard way? And Jim, honestly, I can't think of somebody who's had a harder way. I'm just sharing the story that your reality, right? And what you're dealing with. But could you put your finger on something that life has taught you the hard way?
I'm a little bit of a forward thinker and kind of like somebody, in work, I would go to like these troubled operations or facilities. And I had this vision of, hey, this is what it's going to be. And that kind of forward thinking and looking ahead helped me be successful in a lot of ways. But I think this process, there was one moment in time, I've shared it a little bit with some other people, but it was right after my youngest had been diagnosed, and I had been stuck in the hospital, and I hadn't seen my other kids for, a little bit of time. And my wife came down and we switched, right? She spent a little bit of time with our youngest, and I took the other boys, and, hey, where do you guys want to go? And I want ice cream. And so we go to Baskin Robbins, and I get them like a cone, chocolate ice cream or something. And before I can even like notice what's going on, this kid, Graham, he's got ice cream on his forehead, on his cheeks. I mean, he's got like this turtleneck. It's like going down his neck. There's like a puddle on like the edge of the turtleneck. And this kid, he's just devouring this thing, right? And yet he's got like the biggest smile on his face ever. And I'm like, here's this kid, right? He's got cancer himself. He hasn't seen his brother for weeks. His brother's sick. He's got this genetic disorder that we just found out about. He's going to have this, super challenging health life, struggles for the rest of his life. He hasn't seen his dad. His dad's not home. Like, if there was ever a kid in the world to like have a legit reason to complain and say, I've got dealt like the worst hand ever, it's him. And yet all he cares about is devouring this ice cream cone. And he was just so happy, right? I don't think I've ever seen somebody happier. And And I mean, I don't know if you're how your kids are, but I got one kid who eats perfect. And then I got one kid who's like the cleanest eater. And if he gets like a dash of ketchup on a finger, it's crying until you wipe it off. And then there's Graham, who that kid just like, even tonight, we were in a rush. And so we were eating McDonald's, and he has like the whole thing of fries, and it's all in one hand. He pulls the whole bag out and just stuffs the whole thing in his mouth. And like fries are falling on the ground, but he doesn't care, right? And that's how he was with this ice cream cone. And it just hit me at that moment, like, holy cow, like this moment is all that really matters, right? And I can't control what happens tomorrow. I can't know what's going to be in their future. I don't know what if my oldest is going to get cancer, or these kids are going to get cancer again. I don't know when the day is going to come when they're going to be in a wheelchair. I don't know any of this stuff, and I can't control any of this stuff. But I can control right now. And I can enjoy my ice cream right now. I've never enjoyed ice cream more than that moment. And I took a picture of him, and it was after I cleaned him up a little bit, and I should have gotten the picture of the whole humongous mess. But I just think about that moment in time, and I can't help but think, like, the last several years, as much as I've struggled, I've never been happier in some ways, because I live in the moment so much more. Right. And I think, like, if we knew what was happening tomorrow, what would be the point of living tomorrow? Right. The beauty of life is not knowing what's going to happen. If we knew what was going to happen, it would make life boring and miserable. But, like, to me, that moment I snapped out of it and realized, like, this is what it's like to live, right? It is these moments of time where you can just enjoy an ice cream cone or whatever it is. And so, my kids, we all have those moments where it's been a long day at work or whatever, and your kids come up to you, hey, Dad, can we do this? And the natural response is, no, let's wait, whatever. But I try as much as I can to be like, yeah, you know what? Let's play Uno, or yes, tell me about Minecraft for an hour, even though I don't care at all about it. Or sure, tell me about, what Pokemon you caught today or whatever, right? But some of my favorite moments of the last few years are those moments where I just said, yeah, let's do this right now.
I love that. Given everything that you've experienced in life, what gives you hope these days, Jim?
What these kids lack in physical health and ability, they make up for it in, like, spiritual and, like, emotional gifts. And honestly, like, their reactions and the way that they interact with each other and support each other and live their lives, it's incredible. And so for me, it's just, if these kids have these health challenges and they can be happy and they can, be great human beings and be empathetic and care and do all these things, like, man, who am I to not be the same way? And so, yeah, I mean, I think I try to live my life. I share a lot of their stories because I learned so much from them. I think growing up, I don't know how you guys were, but maybe I was my ego, but I was like, man, I am going to be the best freaking dad ever. I'm going to teach my kids to be like freaking business bosses. They're going to be freaking millionaires by the time they graduate college. They're going to be
selling those blow pops,
dude. Right. And then, like, they're going to be athletes. They're music. I mean, these kids are going to know life, right? They're going to know all the tricks to the trade. I'm going to teach them everything. And then you become a parent and you're like, okay, I'm not responsible for any of this. They're born with this stuff and they teach me way more than I will ever teach them.
Jim, what are you afraid of?
I don't know if I'm afraid of anything, man. I think maybe with guns to your head and some other near-death experiences that I've had, in all seriousness, I don't know. I mean, life doesn't scare me. Death doesn't scare me. I think my relationship with people and my kids, that's what's important. And I think the thing that I worry about is people maybe not feeling that love from me or not feeling that care from me. Like I think, I remember I went to like one of these parent nights or whatever at school. And the teacher said, what do you want your kid to learn this year? And I didn't write anything like math or anything. I don't really care. I was just like, all I care is that he's a good person. So I want to make sure that he's like treating kids the right way. And, if he's not being respectful or treating people the right way, like discipline him, like don't let him be like a bad person. Like that's all I care about. And I'm sure part of it has to do with, their condition and who knows what's going to happen in life. And, academically, will it even matter? I don't know. But I think just the perspective, it's like, I don't really care. Like at the end of the day, I just want these kids to be good kids. And so I think my biggest fear is the same thing with myself, right? Is not being the person that I want to be.
So in that moment, when the diagnosis is shared, or 2 years later, when the diagnosis is shared again, I can imagine there was a temptation or a feeling like you weren't going to ever be where you are today. We talked to, at the beginning, Tyler talked a little bit about people reaching out to us after they hear our guests, and they fill our text messages, our inboxes with all kinds of amazing ahas that people get as they listen to other people's stories. Jim, to the person right now in a situation where they don't think they'll get out of it, and not that you're out of it by any stretch of the imagination, but you're not where you were, what would you say to that person about not giving up? Not being angry, right? Or not staying angry. I can imagine there was maybe a fist raised to heaven, or some prayers like, really? Right? What would you say to those people that are being dealt some difficult hands right now?
I actually feel like one thing that I wish people would do is say, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to cry. I think these are all emotions and feelings that are very real. And then going back to the beginning of our conversation, right? Like so many people try to hide it. I don't want people to see that I'm struggling, but the reality is like, no, man, like it's okay. If you think I haven't been angry or upset about this, like you're crazy. Right? Like I remember like shortly after my son was diagnosed, I was trying to work a little bit, and this guy comes in and he was complaining about the sturdiness or the quality of the plastic spoons that we were using. And he stood up on his and put both of his hands on my desk, like stood over me and was yelling at me over this plastic spoon. And I'd never come closer to murdering somebody in my entire life. And I remember calling my boss right after that happened. And I said, I need help because I might kill somebody.
With the spoon. With the spoon, right?
I just wanted to like punch that guy in the throat and just be like, do you realize you're complaining about a spoon where my kid is laying in a hospital bed with cancer running through his blood? Right? Like, this is ridiculous, and you go on social media or you hear on the news and people are they're complaining about the dumbest stuff, man. And like, of course you're going to be upset because your reality is so different. Your perspective is so different. Right. And I think like, man, in those moments, like it's okay to feel those things. Because you gotta feel it for it to get out. And I don't mean like, yeah, it's you're justified in bad behavior, but there's a difference between feeling emotions and acting on things, right? And I think it's okay to feel, and it's okay to feel all those emotions. And I think that's, in a very real sense, like, right, that those are the things that the atonement also covers, right? Like, we talk about sin and how what Christ did helps us be clean and healed. But man, Christ felt every single one of those emotions. And so we're not alone. And I think that's, I hope if somebody's listening, like they feel that, man, like, you're not alone. You're not alone when you're feeling those frustrations, that anger, that, helplessness, because those are real. But when you go to the right source, there is peace. One thing I'll say is, I had a lot of anger, I had a lot of frustrations, but never once did I ever feel like mad at heaven or mad at God. In fact, it was the opposite. Like, I remember describing it like, with cancer, you see some of the ugliest things ever. And you think, okay, my kid's got cancer, you're going to see him sick, and that's the worst part. But honestly, that's not even like the worst part. It's, I guess maybe it is the worst, but you have friends that, like, in family or people that you think you're going to be able to count on that can't handle it and run from it. And so you lose friends, you lose close people that you thought were going to be your rock during that time. And so it's like, you're not only like heartbroken for your kid, but you're also like heartbroken for these people that you think are going to be there for you. And then there's other people that come out of the woodwork and, maybe aren't that close of friends, but then when you need it, man, they're right there. And so I used to say, like, there's this ugly side of cancer, but in the middle of it is the face of God. Because, like, I've never felt like more of his presence and more of his help than during those times. And I think one lesson for me that I feel strongly is, if you think about, as a father, like, the emotions you feel when your kids struggle, whether it's health or whether it's something else. But, I remember feeling that and thinking, man, if this is how I feel about my kids, imagine how our Father in heaven must feel with us when he sees us struggling. And that whole concept of being a child of God and he's our Father in heaven, all of a sudden became real, where, like, this is exactly what he's feeling. And if he feels this way with me that I do with my son, then I can really go to him. And I can really get comfort from him knowing that he's feeling these same emotions.
Yeah, I think we live way below those privileges.
Yeah.
And we don't tap into that source. We don't tap into that source of strength and that unconditional love that he has for us. So, Jim, we've talked a little bit about honoring, and I'm just honored that we've had some time tonight for you to share a little bit of your journey. And we talked a little bit about honoring your parents. In the time that we have left, is there anyone else that you would like to honor along your journey?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like if I bring up one, I'm doing the others injustice. There's been a lot of people, and one of my early mentors in my profession, his name is Andy Ashton. But I remember him telling me something that I think really, no doubt has impacted me. But he just said, Jim, it's never as good as you think, and it's never as bad as you think. And it was kind of that thought, when things are going well, it's really just one step away from disaster. but also when you're in the middle of some crisis or disaster, you're one step away from getting out of it. And so I think no matter whether it's been work or my kids or whatever it is, I've always tried to kind of keep that in mind, right? Is when it's good, like, man, stay humble, because it doesn't take long for things to derail. And when things are rough, man, just keep pushing forward and keep being consistent, because, you can get it back.
I feel just honored to be able to spend some time with you, Jim, tonight, and just hear about your journey. It's interesting because, we've spent a couple hours together, and I appreciate all that you've shared, and sometimes, when we sit back and we imagine what a rich life looks like, maybe some of our listeners might think of a big house and, and the perfect family and the nice car. But I think sometimes the rich life, is what you've described tonight. It's struggles with our kids. It's learning how to love our spouse, or, in the middle of the hard times.
It's raw.
It's raw. It's all of these things, right? Like, I think the rich life, when I think of a rich life, I couldn't think of a better example than to listen to your journey here tonight. So I'm grateful for what you've shared, and I'm grateful for the things that I've learned, and I'm grateful that our listeners are going to have the opportunity to hear your words as well. Jim, we end every episode of this podcast with the same question. And, it really, given the opportunity to reflect on your life and see where you are now, given all the experiences that you've had, what does it mean to you to be considered the richest man in town?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I got a beautiful wife, and I got 3 beautiful children, and I'm able to spend time with them every day. Right. And for how long, I don't know, but I get to spend that time with them. And, there's this quote that I remember hearing from somebody, but it basically it's about this teacher, where he says, like, I've come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom, and that basically it's me that controls the weather or the climate, and I can make a kid's life amazing or miserable, but I can control that. And so I think for me to be able to be in this spot, like, my kids have obviously, and my family have this terrible, tragic thing that's happened, right? But at the end of the day, man, like, it's on me to control the climate of what happens in my family. And I think we've been able to find joy and happiness along that path, where, if you were to look at my kids, you would never guess that they're unhappy or miserable or woe is me. Like, they just, man, they live their life, and they live it fully, right? They're happy. And I don't know if you've ever met happier kids. And I truly mean that. Like, if you see these kids, man, they are just amazing kids. And to me, like, what more could I ever ask for, right? Like, you can give me a big house, a nice car. You can give me a Padres championship. You can give me 7 nights a week of The Bachelor, but nothing as great as, like, seeing the smiles on their face, man. Like, that to me, like, seeing happy kids, living with my wife and seeing that every day, like, man, I that's the rich life to me.
I love that answer, and I love that you threw a little fantasy in there, like the Padres winning a championship. That's always good too. So
you said hope, man.
what do we got if we don't have that, right?
You can't be a Padres and Chargers fan without relying on, hey, maybe next year.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, listen, Jim, I have loved every minute. I'm grateful.
We scratched the surface, Tyler.
I know, and I'm grateful.
We haven't done any justice.
Right, there's a lot of work to do, but
guy.
I'm grateful for Dave Specht for introducing me to Jim Morrison. You're a good man, and I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the life that you're living, and man, I've loved the conversation. And like Mike said, you know, we haven't scratched the surface, and I want to spend some more time with Jim Morrison for sure. So I appreciate you. I really do. I'm grateful for you.
Yeah, I love the same way, guys. I want to thank you for having me on. And, you know, it's tough talking about some of these things, as you can tell. You know, it's emotional for me, but it's also oddly therapeutic to kind of go through it. But just to see what you guys are doing and bringing to light, you know, some of these things and really focusing on the things that matter. I appreciate what you guys are doing with this podcast and just you in general. And, you know, it helps all of us, man. So thank you guys for what you're doing.
No, you keep us going, right? The idea is this is a midweek church for Tyler and I, and we even joked in our pre-show call, sometimes it's better than church. You know, but I mean, I think our God, our faith, our Savior, those are not good time, fair weather elements, right? Like they are for the down and dirty. They are, their promises are sure. And Jim, when I think of the things that you've shared with me, I'm walking away with fresh perspective. I'm walking away with fresh eyes to see my kids, right? I can guarantee you the next time I'm in my local Baskin Robbins, which is frequently, I'm going to think of your boy. And I'm going to think of that powerful lesson, right? Let's live.
Yeah.
Let's suck the nectar out of this thing, right? And we control the weather. I love so many things. Page of notes, right? Looking kind of like a mad scientist over here, but just scribbling down all kinds of things, Jim. And I really do appreciate you letting us in on that. And that journey, and I can tell you right now, you've been prepared for the load you're carrying.
Yeah.
You've been prepared. You've had those experiences. Your wife has had those experiences. Together, the two of you have been prepared and forged to be able to handle the load that you're carrying. And with his help, you'll carry it. And I commend you for that.
I appreciate that, man.
Jim, it's been fun. We laughed, we cried, and we laughed a whole lot more. And I love it, man. It's been a blast. So thanks so much. Tell your wife and your beautiful kids that we're grateful for them too, for sacrificing some time with Dad. It's been a real blast. And Mark,
sorry we forced that. Sorry we hurried up that fry eating process.
Yeah, yeah. we will do this again, and we appreciate it. So thanks a ton, Jim, and have a good night.
Guys, thank you. Thanks a lot. Have a great night. Take care.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.